Something you said this time yesterday morning stayed with me. We were all talking about the economy and you said two words: foreign policy. In the data that you see so far, how are things stacking up? Does it speak to that?
It certainly does. We haven't gotten the full breakdown on sort of a precinct by precinct basis, but it does appear that some of those swing voters, some of those undecided voters who were concerned about some of the foreign policy stances of the Biden-Harris administration did manage to swing the vote in several key areas. I do want to talk about a differential here, and I'll throw this back at you, John, because you said something overnight during our coverage. Who asked one of our guests that really stuck with me, and that was, what is Joe Biden thinking right now? Michigan is no longer a blue state. Let's make that clear right now. And it's not just that Harris lost this state, but she underperformed Biden in almost every way imaginable. Biden in the last election won 11 of the 83 counties here. Harris this time around looks like she's only going to win 9. And of those 9, 7 of those counties, she underperformed Biden versus Trump on a percentage basis when it comes to the margin of difference here. It gets even worse than that. When you look at the House races, based on the final counts that are coming in just this morning, it looks like the 13 House seats that the Michigan has in the U.S. Congress, 7 of those seats will be held by Republicans. That will be the first majority that they have held on a House basis in quite some time. And adding insult to injury, one of those seats that got flipped from Democrat to Republican was the seat that Alyssa Slotkin vacated in order to run for that vacant Senate seat. And it looks like right now, based on the vote tallies, that she will lose that race, making Mike Rogers the first Republican senator in the state of Michigan, going back to the early 2000s, 2001, and only the second Republican senator in the last 67 years.
It's shocking, and Romaine, what I can tell you is I imagine the incumbent president, Joe Biden, right now is thinking, I could have done better with rank-and-file voters in Detroit, in the suburbs of Detroit. Romaine, what are you hearing about the individuals who voted, who swung this election for Donald Trump?
I'll tell you, Emery, it's still very early here. The sun's not even up. I'm going to spend a lot of day asking those questions. My guess is the Harris campaign is going to spend a lot of time asking those questions as well. It's not quite clear why this swung, not just in the direction of Trump, but why it swung so forcefully. Remember, as of right now, Trump is up by more than 100,000 votes in basically a state that Biden won by 150,000 votes 4 years ago. So what went wrong? It wasn't third-party candidates that were the spoilers, but it does appear that his message did resonate with a lot of those swing voters. That includes Arab and Muslim Americans. That includes Jewish voters. That includes a lot of the Eastern European voters. It includes a lot of Hispanics and a lot of black males.
David, we just heard from Romaine there talking about the fact that it looks like the Republican open Senate seat in Michigan may go to Republican Mike Rogers. Sorry, it was a Democrat that held it as the incumbent. David, what is going on with the down-ballot Senate race in Pennsylvania? Does David McCormick beat the incumbent, Casey?
Right now, he's in the lead, and I think that's something we're going to watch very closely over the course of this day. Can he hold on to that lead as the remaining votes are being tabulated and come in here? But I think that's a surprise to a lot of people who looked at the polling going into this race and saw just a few weeks ago Bob Casey, the incumbent Democrat, with a 9 percentage point lead over David McCormick. That, of course, narrowed in that latest poll from the New York Times and Siena College. But you cannot overemphasize how much Bob Casey is a son of this state, has been here in the Senate for 3 terms, was looking to his 4th, has this heritage going back to his father, who was the 2-term governor of this state. Just somebody who is a real institution in this state, and this is a huge move. In fact, it plays out the way it looks like it is. You know, I want to pick up on something that Romaine Bostick said just a moment ago, and that's underperformance. Yes, the kind of topics and issues are different here. I don't think foreign policy played as big a role here in Pennsylvania as it did in Michigan, but you look at this state and where Kamala Harris won and where she didn't. Where she did win, she underperformed Joe Biden in that last race, and this is a story of the kind of Rust Belt cities and the rural parts of this state. We had a lot of conversations last night about how big and varied and diverse this state is. I'm here in a city that historically has gone for Democrats. Indeed, we saw that in yesterday's race. Democrats still had an edge here in Philadelphia and the surrounding suburbs and exurbs, but you move west, very red, and that is an area that Donald Trump was really able to capitalize on here in 2024 in much the same way that he did in 2016. You look at kind of the data that we have thus far, and like Romaine, I'll be studying the numbers and talking to folks over the course of the day here. He appealed to those same voters who ushered him into power back in 2016 quite successfully this time around, guys.
David, just quickly here, I'm curious, it is early days, but are we getting some sort of sense from the exit polls, from what people have observed in terms of the number of voters, about the size of turnout, as well as the composition across the state?
We don't have a huge amount of detail here on composition yet, but we know that turnout was huge. We know that the number of people who turned in those mail-in ballots early, that was a big number as well. Maybe not mirroring what we saw during the pandemic, but getting close to it. As Anne-Marie and you have said over the course of the morning, look, so much money was poured into this race. So much effort was made to turn out voters from both the two candidates and their campaigns and these outside groups. That effort really paid off. And I was thinking as I went to bed for just a few short hours last night, sort of what path forward the Harris campaign might have to challenge this. What I kept hearing from every county official I talked to yesterday was, yes, how big the turnout was, but how kind of seamlessly everything run. There weren't the kind of aberrations that we saw in cycles past. So I think that there is a recognition among the Harris campaign, certainly, that they had very little movement here in terms of what they could do to kind of challenge anything here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.